Local security officials regularly visit elderly survivors to remind them of their legal obligations to remain quiet about events from 1975. These visits intensify whenever anniversaries approach, or when foreign journalists attempt to investigate the disaster. Survivor families report receiving phone calls warning them against speaking with researchers or participating in any activities that might draw attention to the historical events. Children and grandchildren of survivors face employment discrimination and educational restrictions when authorities discover their family connections to the disaster. The harassment extends to multiple generations, ensuring that even people born decades after the catastrophe understand the consequences of discussing their family history. Social media platforms and internet search engines actively suppress any content related to the Banqiao Dam disaster through sophisticated censorship algorithms that automatically detect and remove relevant posts. Users attempting to share historical information about the 1975 floods find their accounts suspended or their content deleted within hours of posting. Keyword filters block searches for terms associated with the disaster, redirecting users to unrelated topics or generating error messages claiming that no relevant information exists. Online discussion forums remove threads about dam safety or historical flooding events when conversations approach topics related to Banqiao. Video platforms automatically flag and delete any footage that mentions the disaster, even in academic contexts or historical documentaries produced outside China. The digital suppression operates so effectively that younger Chinese citizens often express genuine surprise when learning about the disaster from foreign sources. Educational materials continue systematically erasing the Banqiao disaster from official historical records used in schools and universities across China. History textbooks covering the 1970s devote extensive coverage to political developments and economic policies, while completely omitting any mention of major infrastructure failures or natural disasters. Students studying engineering receive no education about dam safety issues or historical failures that might inform their future professional decisions. University courses on disaster management and emergency response avoid discussing Chinese examples in favor of foreign case studies that cannot challenge official narratives about domestic infrastructure safety. Libraries remove books and academic papers that contain detailed information about the disaster, replacing them with sanitized versions that minimize the event's significance or eliminate references entirely. The psychological impact of this systematic memory erasure extends far beyond the immediate families affected by the disaster itself. Chinese society operates under constant awareness that major traumatic events can simply disappear from collective memory through government action. This knowledge creates a pervasive anxiety about the reliability of official information and the permanence of historical knowledge. Citizens understand that discussing suppressed events carries personal risks, leading to self-censorship that extends to private conversations within families and social groups. The culture of enforced silence prevents the natural healing processes that societies typically experience after major tragedies, leaving psychological wounds that never receive proper acknowledgement or treatment. Mental health professionals report elevated rates of anxiety and depression in regions affected by the disaster, but cannot address the root causes because discussing the original trauma remains prohibited. Independent journalists and academic researchers attempting to investigate the Banqiao disaster face systematic intimidation tactics designed to discourage any serious examination of the historical events. Reporters who travel to the affected regions find themselves followed by security personnel who document their activities and contacts. Hotel managers receive instructions to report foreign journalists who ask questions about local history or attempt to interview elderly residents. Researchers requesting access to government archives discover that relevant documents have been reclassified or transferred to restricted collections unavailable for academic study. Chinese academics who collaborate with foreign researchers on disaster-related projects face career consequences, including research funding cuts, travel restrictions, and exclusion from professional conferences. Several prominent researchers have reported receiving explicit warnings to abandon their investigation or face criminal prosecution for revealing state secrets. Digital surveillance systems monitor the communications and activities of disaster survivors and their families through comprehensive tracking networks that operate across multiple platforms and technologies. Government agencies maintain detailed files on families connected to the disaster, including their phone records, internet activity, travel patterns, and social associations. Artificial intelligence systems automatically flag conversations or messages that contain references to historical flooding events or dam safety issues. Facial recognition cameras at transportation hubs identify survivors attempting to travel to commemorate disaster anniversaries or visit memorial sites. Financial surveillance tracks any unusual spending patterns that might indicate preparation for memorial activities or meetings with journalists. The digital monitoring extends to monitoring the social networks of survivors, ensuring that authorities can identify and suppress any organized efforts to preserve historical memory or seek accountability for past events. Physical access to the original disaster site has been deliberately obscured through construction projects and administrative restrictions that prevent independent assessment of the historical evidence. New development projects have covered much of the original flood zone with modern buildings and infrastructure that eliminate visible traces of the 1975 catastrophe. Road access to key historical locations requires special permits that are routinely denied to researchers, journalists, and international visitors. Military checkpoints control access to areas near the former dam site, with guards instructed to turn away anyone who cannot provide official authorization for their presence. Tourist maps of the region omit historical markers or monuments that might draw attention to the disaster, while new place names have replaced traditional village names that carried historical significance. Government authorities have constructed artificial landmarks and monuments celebrating modern development achievements in locations that previously served as informal memorials to disaster victims. International academic institutions face systematic obstacles when attempting to conduct research on Chinese disaster history or infrastructure safety issues. Foreign universities find their research proposals rejected without explanation when they involve studying historical dam failures or emergency management practices. Chinese authorities refuse to grant research visas to international scholars whose previous work has addressed sensitive historical topics. Academic conferences focusing on disaster management or infrastructure safety cannot secure Chinese participation if their programs include sessions on historical case studies. International publishing houses face pressure to exclude Chinese disaster case studies from academic textbooks and professional journals distributed in China. Research collaboration agreements between foreign and Chinese institutions contain explicit clauses prohibiting investigation of historical disasters or infrastructure failures. The systematic exclusion of international oversight ensures that Chinese disaster history remains protected from independent academic scrutiny. This pattern of information suppression extends consistently across other major disasters and traumatic events throughout Chinese history. The same censorship techniques, harassment tactics, and digital surveillance methods used to suppress Banqiao information operate to hide details about the Great Leap Forward famine, industrial accidents, earthquake responses, and various infrastructure failures. Government authorities have perfected these suppression methods through decades of practice, creating comprehensive systems for controlling historical narratives and preventing public discussion of governmental failures. Each major disaster becomes an opportunity to refine information control techniques that can be applied to future events. The institutional knowledge gained from suppressing one tragedy gets systematically applied to suppress subsequent disasters, creating an increasingly sophisticated apparatus for historical erasure. The culture of enforced silence prevents the institutional learning necessary to prevent future disasters by eliminating the feedback mechanisms that normally allow societies to improve their safety systems through honest assessment of past failures. Engineers cannot study historical failures to improve current designs because detailed information about previous disasters remains classified or has been destroyed. Emergency management professionals cannot develop better response procedures because they lack access to case studies of how previous disasters were mishandled. Political leaders cannot learn from past mistakes because official records minimize or eliminate evidence of governmental failures. The systematic suppression of disaster history ensures that the same institutional failures will continue producing future catastrophes because the knowledge necessary for improvement has been deliberately eliminated from public discourse and professional education. China currently operates more than 98,000 dams across its territory, a figure that exceeds the combined dam infrastructure of most other nations worldwide. Many of these structures were constructed using the same flawed engineering principles and rushed construction methods that destroyed Banqiao in 1975. The institutional culture that prioritized political goals over safety margins remains unchanged, ensuring that similar disasters will continue occurring until fundamental reforms address the root causes rather than managing consequences. When societies ignore historical lessons, those lessons transform into future tragedies. China's infrastructure ambitions now extend globally through Belt and Road projects that export these same dangerous practices to developing countries lacking technical expertise to evaluate safety standards. Institutional secrecy and truth suppression ultimately endanger everyone.